Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here. We're super excited to have Teen Esteem and Karen and Julie here to present to us tonight. And we are going to be talking about preparing your students for college beyond the academics. And so thanks for everybody that came in person and those of you that will be watching the recording later on.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Thank you, Leslie and Stephanie, for having us. We really appreciate it. We're very excited to be here. And for the parents who are taking their time to spend with us, we know you're very busy, so we really appreciate it. We really appreciate the people that came in person. Thank you for coming. My name is Julie, and as Leslie said, we are with Teen Esteem Plus. And the plus is because we talk to way more than just teens. We work with kindergartners through 12th grade, and we work with parents. So we added the plus. And I want to tell you a bit about who we are, just so you have an idea where we're coming from. For 29 years, we've been working with the schools and our communities and going in and doing classroom presentations and assemblies and talking to kids about all the challenges that they're facing. And right now, we're talking a lot about bullying, peer pressure, vaping is a huge topic, and substance abuse. And we're talking a lot about mental health. And we especially want to make sure they know that their value is based on who they are and not what they do, not their performance. So that's a big message that we have as well. And we actually reach 16 to 18,000 students every year in our communities. So we really learn a lot from them. It's a very engaging presentation. And then on top of that, we work really closely with their teachers and their administrators and other school personnel. We work really closely with school counselors and community members like therapists and law enforcement, DEA, and we want to share all that information and all that insight with you parents. So that's why we're here. I have been with Teen Esteem for 11 years, and I have two kids. My son Bryce is 23. My daughter Allison is 19 years old. And I'm super excited tonight because we have our CEO Kelly with us, and she has so much insight on this topic. So I know you're really going to learn a lot.
Well, thank you. Again, it's an honor to be here. Very pleased to be here. My background is a little bit different. I have only been with Teen Esteem a little over a year, and I have about 25 plus years in higher education and high school education. So I really love servant leadership, and I love supporting kids, and I love to see them thrive and get developed. And so I have that background, and two of the roles that really come into play tonight is I was a Yale freshman advisor at Yale University while I was working there, and that was an amazing experience. And then also currently I'm an alumni interviewer for Stanford Office of Admissions. So they allow alumni to actually interview potential candidates, and we write these great reports and submit it in. So we thought this all tied in together really nicely, but a lot of university and high school experience. So tonight, what we're going to delve into is just really how to look at some expectations and prepare you and your child for some options that are coming up. It may be college, it may not be college, but we're going to explore all the different options. We're going to share with you some trends we're seeing, some responses from college freshmen that we went out and talked to, and then also just the importance of discussing all the various options across the board and when you should start doing that. So that is tonight's presentation as we go forward. Right. So let's dive into it. Are you doing the clicker? Good, thank you. All right, so in preparation for post-high school, some things that you might want to consider is just that, we want to know how many of you, maybe in the room, online, we can't ask you directly, but how many of you have kids that are in college? All right, we've got two, great. And then how about in high school? Okay, we're right there. And then middle school. Yeah, so across the board. So it's wonderful to know what we have in our audience and how we can be useful here. Now, college can be formative because a lot of you have been to college and you've explored it and you've had kids in college. And so obviously this is a really big shift. And what we see is it's so transformational for students to go into this new phase of their life. And it's really not only for the children, but also for the parents. So it's really important for us to just harp on the idea that it's a major shift in their lives. They're living away from the first time they're in their lives. A lot of them, they're adjusting to new roommates, new freedoms, very different schedules, new cultures. And then they're also talking about a lot more choices. So being wise about your choices and what to do with those choices is really key. So with any college level or in each college type, you're going to have issues to address according to this. So in preparation for this, we look at a few things. And time management, you will hear throughout this presentation, is so critical. Knowing it, understanding it, and learning how to manage it, because even as adults, I think we struggle with time management a bit. But when you're 18 years old, going off to this new phase, be it college or just work, time management is critical. And then we're also looking at coping skills. This will become invaluable when you look at the fact that how you handle stress, how you navigate different adversity, how you cope with it could really change the trajectory of how you handle any situation. Let's see what we have next. Oh, discipline, of course, being disciplined, learning how to study, learning how to, yes, I will. Study how you're going to go forward on that. Resourcefulness, again, it's not just doing Google searches and finding out the research, but it's how do you go ask for help? How do you go meet with a professor? How do you sign up for clubs, classes? How do you meet with your RA? It's all these things about resourcefulness, and Julia will address when you should start talking to your children about it. It shouldn't be the first day they've left, but letting them do that. Financial responsibility. We were talking about that earlier. They will run into so many fairs where there's tables giving credit cards and they want you to sign up for that 29% credit card. So financial responsibility, the money you do have, you may be on scholarship as well. So that's a really important preparation for college. Healthy habits. How do you deal with it? Are you dealing with running? Are you taking care of your body? Are you eating well? Are you sleeping well? Just learning healthy habits early on. So it's not the first time you're doing it, but it's something that's been ingrained in your children. Good values. You know, they're going to make choices. They're out there on their own. So as long as you've established good values early on, that will be a mainstay for them. Strong sense of self. Are they okay being alone? Are they okay with just their own decisions? Do they have to follow a group? We want to make sure that they have a strong sense of who their identity is. And then also boundaries. They want to say, this is the line they're not going to cross. They can stand up for that. So these are all really important preparation items that you should think about before your child goes off to college or just post-graduation and going off to a job or trade school. And most importantly, open to change. Flexibility to explore these new great experiences. Being open to change and being flexible is really going to enhance the experience. Something we wanted to show you is college may not be for everyone. As we see here, about a year, as far as dropout rates, it's a 30%, almost 30% of across the United States are drop out of school. So 3 out of 10 students enroll, take the time to go, get there, and they drop out. Various reasons. Number one is financial. So this is something when we talk about fit later on, that's really, really important to address, because fit is going to be a critical part of how you decide where you should apply and probably where you should go. Family, I believe that is just like if you have family issues, you know, you could have 2 separate families, you could be, 2 parents, but at the same time, it could be a family health issue. So that's another reason kids tend to drop out. And then just not the right fit. Back to, we didn't do our homework, it's not what I thought, so they drop out, and then lack of time. So all these reasons together really, really make a good steps. Sure.
One of the things that we want to talk about with parents is encourage you to start the conversations early. So what does that look like? We want to really make sure they are the ones that are pursuing their dreams, their interests, and finding out what they're good at and what their passion is. And that can be really, really fun, and it can help them build their confidence and really help them with their decision-making skills. So let's talk about what that looks like a little bit. I was telling Kelly, my son wanted to be a pilot from the time he was 5 years old. And so when he was as soon as he got to high school, we got him a couple lessons over at Buchanan for his birthday. And my husband, it took some persistence because we don't know anybody at Southwest, but he arranged for the 2 of them to shadow a pilot at Southwest Airlines. And it was such a cool experience. They had so much fun. They were bonding over it. They were just had a really great time. But guess what? He realized after talking to the pilot and those lessons, he did not want to be a pilot anymore. And that saved so much time and money, because that's a tough pivot. If you go to piloting school, you can't really shift to business very easily. So then he wanted to be a chemical engineer. So we connected him with a friend of a friend. and let them talk to them about what that might look like. And my daughter she loved kinesiology, and she wanted to be an athletic director. Kelly knows all about athletic directors. Um, well, she shadowed somebody. He arranged for her to shadow somebody, and she found out the pay is terrible. We kind of knew that, but she also found out that the hours were awful. They worked all the holidays and weekends, as you know, and they really they changed the requirements. So now you have to have a master's degree. You have to have a master's degree, and you only make about $60,000 a year. So she really wasn't interested. Welcome, hi. She really wasn't interested in that anymore. And she loved it. She was really good, but it wasn't something that she wanted. So that was really good for us to be able to find that out in advance. So what we wanted to make sure that parents realize is as you get closer, that's all fun in the beginning. And they might want to do some crazy things, and that's okay because they'll change their mind 100 times, most kids. But as you get closer to having to make a decision, make sure you're talking to your kids about, okay, how much is this going to cost you for this degree? And how long is it going to take you? And then what are you going to do with it? It's really easy to find out. The research is super simple. So how much are you going to make? Are you going to be able to pay off those student loans if you have to go in that direction? And also, what do you need just a bachelor's, or are you going to have to get a master's degree? Are you going to have to get a PhD? My daughter had thought about pivoting to be a physical therapist, but you have to have a master's or a PhD, and she just wasn't interested in doing that. So those are some of the things that we want to encourage you to do, and conversations we want to encourage you to have.
Yeah.
Kelly, do you have thoughts on that?
Well, there is in addition to college, be it 2-year or 4-year college, there's also some other options you could look at. There's a gap year. Some of you may not want to hear that, but sometimes your child may not be ready for it. You know, it could be maturity, it could be health. They just may want to explore some other things. There's traveling, there's volunteering, there's figuring out what is the right course of action that you want to do. I feel like I wasted my freshman year because I wasn't as focused as I wanted to be, because I think I wasn't as mature as I should have been and to take advantage of the school I was at. So we're seeing across the United States that kids are dropping out of school for some reasons of it just not being a good fit, and they may not be ready for it. So consider those options. It's fine to not, go right into school. It's fine to explore what other options work, be it trade school, vocational. It also could be, you could look at the military. So there are a lot of options. There's so many choices out there. So don't feel like you're pigeonholed into one thing. That's important. So as you're looking at school, if that's where you want to be, again, we said fit is really critical. So one thing I would just say, you've really got to look at the distance, the student body size. That's so important. Urban, city, sports, all these things are important. So really examine the schools. Don't just go there because you saw a great sweatshirt or your neighbor went there or somebody at school. Kids get into that. So you need to understand that with every single school you're looking at. Housing situation, that's a big one. So especially if they go away, are they going to be able to live on campus, or are they going to have to live off campus and have a car? That drives up the cost. Plus, there's also a safety issue. So make sure that you're looking at housing situations. I was fortunate to go to a school that they provided housing for all 4 years, and I loved living on campus every day. And I think that created an affinity. So housing situations are important. Cost, of course, it's not just tuition, room, and board. It's also just the living expenses. How far is it, and how much do things cost in that area? So make sure you're exploring all that, because those things will sneak up on you. Another thing is admission rates. As we were speaking earlier, admissions rates are so important to understand. Is it a 30% admission rate? Is it 90% admission rate? Know where your child is as far as their acceptability into a school, just so that you're not going too far out of your range to apply to certain schools. You don't want to go to a school that may have, I think Harvard has a 3% admission rate right now. So, unless you really have that dream. And then the next one is obviously academic focus. Like, is it a research institution? Do they really go into entrepreneurships? What are the majors? So I met someone this Sunday. I was asking this senior, and she was at church with me. And I said, "You're a senior. Where are you going?" And she goes, "Well, I know I want to go into nursing school." I said, "Well, how many schools did you apply to?" And she said, 11. I thought that was amazing that she applied to 11. But the one thing she did when I asked her about where she was applying, her choices were, I know I can get into all these 11. The difference is I want to be West Coast, I want to do nursing, and she was very targeted. So she had some safety schools. We'll talk about that in a second, but she really made sure she was covered there. I'm not sure why she chose 11, but to each its own. And then the next thing you might want to consider also is, can you thrive there? I mean, this is an important part of their life. For 4 to 5 years, your child's going to be away or going and investing their time there. So make sure that it's just not about the name or like Julie said, you're going to get something out of it, but that is a long time considering they're only 18. Make sure that they can thrive there. So that's important as well. So it's just, it could be, in addition to this, looking at curriculars, it could be looking at organizations, how much fun you can have there, how much can you explore new opportunities. So there is so much that is involved in this experience that it's way more than the academics. It goes beyond that.
It definitely does. As a matter of fact, I was telling Kelly, my son ended up at Sac State, and I'm so proud of him because he applied for this incredibly competitive internship. And to give you an idea, his roommate, who was also in the program, he had a 4.0, and he was the class president. He was the class president for his class for UC Davis both years that he was there. So it was very competitive. My son was barely squeaking by with a 3.0. And I really didn't think he had a chance at it. But you know what? They looked at they saw that he worked his way through school and that his employers gave him really high recommendations. And they saw that he was promoted at both of his jobs, that he was steadily promoted, and that he was a good hard worker. So at some places it might be just about the grade point average, but not everywhere.
Not everywhere. Very true. Another thing is just really when you're looking into schools, really understand the cycles of admission. So you have early decision at a lot of schools and you have the regular cycle. A lot of students that I've talked to feel that I'm going to get in early because that shows I'm really committed. I'm going to apply because they know that that this is my number one choice. What I have found in my work and serving in these certain different roles is that it's the percentage. The percentages are almost exactly the same, early decision or regular. So the percentage of who gets accepted, it's a numbers game, but when you look at percentages, it's almost exactly equal. I will say that having interviewed some of these kids, I think you get your top gunners, you're just heavy hitters in that early decision realm. I think if I had to choose, I would do regular, just because I think people calm down a bit, and the percentage is the same as far as admission rate, but you get probably people that are maybe a little bit more well balanced than people that are just gunning in October and November. So that would be something I would offer to that. The other thing is that graduation rates and placement. So you can look this up in a school. It's not only the graduation, but the placement, college placements. A lot of schools will say, this is our average placement. So you graduate from here, there's 50% chance, 80% chance. That's really something important to consider when you're looking at schools. If that's an important factor for you, like where they go, like Julie was saying, we're making this investment, they're making their time investment. You want to see where they can get placed. One thing I thought just interesting is if you're really interested in pharmaceuticals, you have to really do your research. So what do you think is the number one college in the country for pharmaceutical studies to be a pharmacist? I think it's surprising. It's not what you think.
I thought it was my alma mater.
No guesses? John, you think? It's UNC Carolina, University of North Carolina. That surprises me. I just would have never thought them as the top pharmaceutical school in the country. So again, doing your research and learning these things is really important.
So it's not always about the big name.
No, it's not. It's not always about the big name. So now let's go to a point where you figured out some schools you're interested in. You've done your research. Now it's time to talk about the admissions carousel that we will get into. So I'm going to go forward here. We're going to play a short video for you. Oh, I don't know if it's kind of in the middle. So
I think if you just push it,
it'll go back. With this, as far as this video is, they're doing it now and then. So they're comparing probably when it was like for some of us and now the way it is. Let's see if it.
my job.
Deciding who gets to attend our prestigious university.
How many applicants we got this year?
2005.
For how many spots?
2000.
Oh no, we gotta cut 5 kids?
Bummer. I hope they've applied to at least one more school.
Okay, how many applications do we have this year?
100,000.
What?
Are we even that good of a college?
I guess so.
This was my safety school when I was a kid.
If it was like this when we were teenagers, like 0 chance we would have gotten in.
Oh my goodness.
What?
This girl got a 1,000 on her SAT.
Quadruple digits?
What? Is she like a computer?
I did not even know that numbers went that high.
I hope we don't lose her to like Harvard.
Accepted.
A 1,400 on her SAT.
Oof.
I know.
I mean, we're test optional. Why would she even put that on her application?
Maybe she'll make up for it with an amazing essay. Here's a solid applicant.
Tell me everything.
His essay is about his hero.
That's so heroic.
He says his mom is the wind beneath his wings.
He quoted Bette Midler? That's deep, man.
So vulnerable.
And
This says he lived without electricity and taught himself organic chemistry by candlelight.
but he didn't learn electrical engineering to rig up a light.
Guess not.
And he also didn't design a new photovoltaic battery.
You know, college isn't for everyone.
Holy cow, you see these extracurriculars?
Babysitting, and she made friendship bracelets at camp.
How does she manage to do both of these things in 4 years?
That's the sort of work ethic we need at this Ivy League institution.
She's basically the CEO of her own company.
We should give her a scholarship.
So she led clinical trials at a research institute.
Yeah, we have like 1,000 applicants that did the same thing.
Says here she cured cancer.
But only one kind of cancer.
Yeah, there are so many.
So many.
Do you think this feels like a wait list?
I mean, who isn't curing deadly diseases in high school?
Yeah, this is wait list.
So this kid fled a war-torn country carrying a baby in his arms.
Only one baby?
Yeah, I noticed that too.
I mean, he's got 2 arms.
I guess we need to choose between him and the girl who fought off a bear to save her entire family.
Let's put them both in the maybe pile and see if someone more deserving applies.
College admissions offices, please don't hold this against our children.
Right.
We know you have a tough job.
Right. Apparently, the number of applications are so much more than they were when we were that age. And I know that because I would not have gotten into any of the schools that I'd applied to if I were applying to them right now.
Not a chance.
Yeah, that would be a job I could never do. Like, it would be so hard to say.
Everyone's accepted.
It'd be hard to say no to one person, but imagine having to say no to like 85% of the people who apply.
If you were going through the application process right now, hearts.
So some facts that I looked up, and it was pretty amazing. But you have lots of options. I think that admissions video was pretty funny, but it is true. You never know how you're going to get in, who got chosen, and it almost seems like it's just a lottery. You just don't know. But there are some good news. So there are lots of options. There's over 280 four-year colleges in California. There's over 190 community colleges. And then you have 190 trade schools and vocational schools. And one thing that was really fun with this research was that California has more colleges than 19 states combined in the United States. It has the most colleges of anybody. And it has to do with population, I'm sure, and size, but that's pretty impressive. Number 2 was New York. So you have so many options. You just have to figure out what works for you. And then on average, I did want to share some facts about, like I'd said, I met someone who applied to 11 schools. On average, I think high school seniors apply to 5 to 8 schools. That's typically what the range is as far as how many schools. Can I ask how many yours? 7. Okay, so we hit it. So right there. And the cost of applications, they say ranges from $30 to $100. That's less than I thought, believe it or not. And I think it changed with COVID a little bit. I know they waived fees during COVID, but that was interesting. There is a general rule of thumb that you should use when applying. And if you're looking at 8 schools, say, they're saying you should do 2 safety schools that slam dunk, you can get in. So 2 safety schools, 4 that are good matches and good target schools, and then 2 that are reaches, because you just never know. So they're just balancing the odds there. And so that's kind of the way you should look at that going forward. Let's see, I'm sorry, I'm losing my place a little bit. Did you jump in here? Okay, suggestions.
Yeah.
Okay, one thing, I'll jump, just let me finish this thought. One thing I would say is just develop a list of schools, maybe do 8 to 10 schools, and make sure that even though the number one choice may be your favorite, that even if you got into the number 8, you didn't get into 7, but you got the 8, it's still a great choice. Make sure that it's something that would be an ideal fit for your student and you. Just make sure that you talk about it, that you would still be happy going down that line, just because you want to manage your expectations and you don't want to get disappointed. Acceptance rates, as we said, can just really do a mind game on you. And you have to, like Julie said, you want to make sure you're thinking about your value is who you are, not what you get into school for, because you could spin on that. A lot of kids I've seen go in the tanks if they haven't done it. I just recently did early admission looking at Stanford applicants, and these 4 students were just off the chart. I thought they should. I couldn't believe it. I was just embarrassed to be in the same room with them. I said, how did I, how did people ever get in there? And read the report, and I couldn't wait to see the who got in, and all 4 were denied. I could not believe it. And I thought, well, when you have a 4% acceptance rate, that's what happens. So that's crazy. So I think they had 48,000 applicants and 2,000 got in. So again, it's that those games. So make sure you don't spin out on that. Make sure you set the expectations clear, and you want to have some good positive things. I would say that what I've learned from doing admissions and working with Yale undergraduates and then Stanford undergraduates is make sure that the applications that they're themselves, you can see through canned answers, and you can see through responses that have been rehearsed and that have been like, this is what I think you want me to say. This is what you want to hear. The more authentic you can be, that is what's triggers. Be authentic, be yourself, present the best just version of you. I had one kid that just kind of teared up, and I thought that was amazing. He teared up and he was vulnerable. That's the stuff that's really sets people apart. I do think social media, I will touch upon it, be careful with that. There are searches done on your children's social media, so be very careful with that. What they post, what they say, their language, just pictures they choose to put on there, especially depending on the school you're looking at, they will look at that. So that can not bode well on their behalf. Yeah. Another thing that I think stands out in an application is original thought. Just original thought, something that is a unique, and you're a separator. And, looking at holistically, you want to have that balance of doing more than just academics. You want that they contribute back to their community, that they actually care about something. They have traditions that they love. You want to stand out. You want to make a big difference. And I know at Yale and both Stanford, that was a big deal because everybody is walking along and there's part of this cohort, but you want to be unique, and you can be unique as well as, I make dumplings every Sunday with my grandma. That's what I do. And that's what I love to do. There is something unique about everybody in this room, everybody online. All of your children are so special. Find out what that is that's unique about them to make them stand out. It can be small, but you want to separate yourself. You want to find out that unique specialness that as parents what that probably unique is. And so help them identify that, because a lot of times when you're a student, you don't see that yourself. That's really important. So there is a perfect school for everybody. We do know that. So that will happen. So just keep at it. And then basically the bottom line is that you have so many options. So just give yourself the best chance, and everything will work out. I'm wondering if that's my phone, which would
Might
really
be yours,
embarrass
but
me.
I'm gonna talk right now. so if you
Okay,
wanna grab
I'll
it.
go grab it.
So, Kelly made a really good point. If your child is applying to a school where they turn down almost everybody who applies, you better have a backup plan, right? And community college, I'm going to talk about that. I was talking to a couple parents before we started, and it is a fantastic option. It is not, there's a kind of a stigma, especially with the kids, but for our family, it wasn't just a backup option. It was one of our number one options for different reasons for each of our children. So I really want to encourage you to consider this if you haven't already. We want to be real about it. There's positives and there's negatives about a community college. Number one, obviously, the cost. DVC right now is free for the first 2 years. Another thing about community college is if you can explore different majors. We were talking about, Stephanie and I were talking about that. If you don't have any idea, if you're 18 years old and shockingly don't know what you want to do for the rest of your life, community college might be a great option. And a lot of schools, it's difficult or impossible to change majors. And if you're at a 4-year, it's going to be a lot more expensive if you change majors, likely going to add some time to your attendance time. So if you're at a community college, you're not going to have that issue. I think when we were paying before it was free, I think it was like $1,000 a year. So even though my daughter will probably be there for 3 years, if we do have to pay for that 3rd year, it's not going to be a big issue. Because she is one of those kids that didn't know what she wanted to do, and she changed majors. My son, the other thing about switching majors, my son, he was really struggling with his self-discipline, and he really wasn't interested at all in school and just wanted to be done with it. And it was such a shame because schools came so easy for him, and he always had such great grades, but he just wasn't motivated. And he switched from chemical engineering after he took a political science class. And we thought, oh my gosh, what are you going to do with that? And especially in this environment, who would want that for their kid, right? Right? In the kind of political environment we have right now. But you know what? He loved it. And as it turns out, and by that point, we were like, you know what? I don't care what he gets, just get a 4-year and figure it out and just, pray that he makes it through. But he loved it. He's a great speaker, debater. He's a fantastic writer. It comes so easy for him. And he's passionate about it. He loves it. It was like the spark that he needed. And as I was talking about with the internship, that was an internship at the state capitol. He got to work as an aide to one of the state senators. And it was an amazing experience and led to a permanent job. Now he's got a job at the Capitol. We wish he could claim us as dependents because he's got amazing, amazing benefits. Love to get on his health insurance. So that's definitely something to consider. And the reason I bring that up is because if we hadn't been in that, and if the circumstances had been different, we definitely would have discouraged him from going into political science. And I'm so glad that we didn't, not because we have it all figured out, but just because of the circumstances. And I know he's going to do really well, and he's going to love what he's doing. So that's the reason why I bring that up. And then another thing about community college is moving away from home and living away from home. Some kids might not be ready. Does anybody have kids that you think, I don't know? And this kind of worries me for a few different reasons. It might be discipline. It might be maturity. You might be thinking, you know what? They're probably just going to stay home and game all day and not even go to class. That's for sure a concern that a lot of us have. It might be that kid where you think, if I send him off, he is going to absolutely go off the rails. That's it. That's a concern. I want him to be at home so I can see when they make mistakes, and I can be coaching them and be there to pick up the pieces when they make poor decisions, or if they make poor decisions. Another thing that we really want to emphasize is mental health challenges. So we want to make sure if your kids are struggling with anxiety or depression, it might not be a great idea for them to move away. Maybe it's better for them to stay home with that safety net and your encouragement, and you can be doing daily check-ins. So that's a huge thing to consider that we're seeing a lot of. And then lastly, my favorite part, this is the best kept secret. I'm kind of preaching to the choir because I know we have a lot of community college fans in here, but it's the best kept secret about community colleges. It's so easy to transfer. If your target school, your child's target school is really competitive, they're going to be able to get in so much more easily as a transfer student after going to a community college for a couple of years than they would if they were a freshman. And to give you an example, my daughter would have had to have over a 4.0 to get into the program that she wants to get into at UC Davis. Now, as a transfer student, she's going to be guaranteed to get in if she has just a 3.25. The reason, I'm sorry, you have a question? Yeah. The 30% that Kelly.
It's the 30% that's dropping out, and they do calculate an amount for transfer students. So every cohort has the amount of people that they're going to accept for transfer students. Yeah, yeah. It does. It does. Yes.
Yeah, great question. Great question. Yeah, unfortunately, it opens up a lot more spaces.
You want to go to the negatives?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the negatives, we definitely want to be able to talk, be real about it. It's not very exciting. When all the seniors are gathering around the banner of the school that they've got accepted to, that they're going to, and your kid's standing by DVC, it's kind of a bummer. It shouldn't be, but it definitely was. As a matter of fact, I think my son skipped school that day. And a lot of their friends are moving away and they're living on their own, and that's really hard. This is real. We actually have a handout on our website if you want to check it out. It's advice from a sophomore at DVC to incoming freshmen. And so this is a real issue, and it's a lot harder to make friends. So they've got to get out there, and they've got to go to clubs and stuff, because it's kind of a commuter school. Everybody goes and then they just go home. So if they don't make an effort, then they're going to have a hard time. And then some kids might not take it very seriously. It just feels like high school, except they have to drive a little further than they did when they went to high school. So those are all some negatives that are real that you need to take into consideration. Kelly, do you have some other options to?
Sure.
discuss?
Again, we mentioned the experience. So again, going to a 4-year school where you move away and you live on campus is very different from commuting, for that first 2 years. So the experience you have, it's all about what you want to get out of it and what works for you. I would say some great options. We touched upon them earlier: trade schools, vocational, firefighting school, electrician. All these vocations, these people pay amazing salaries. It might be a passion of your student, of your child to proceed. There's military options. They might want to go in the Marines. It might be a place for them to go. The Army, Peace Corps. There are so many different options. It's really about having that heart-to-heart talk about what's best for you. And we've seen a lot of kids find their own niche by taking that year off, or even taking a semester off and figuring out what they want to do. So again, college is not for everyone. It's great, and we're going to talk more about it, but it's about where you can get the best learning for your student and what works for your family. And I would just say to keep focusing on the positive and keep your minds open to that. Be really, really flexible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked about college choices, and we talked about the admissions nightmares. Depending on where you're going, could be a nightmare. Now we want to talk about when they're getting ready to flee the nest. And we want to talk a little bit about your changing role as a parent and some of the potential pitfalls that your kids could face. I do want to recommend this book. It is fantastic, How to Raise an Adult. Julie Lythcott, has anybody heard of this book? So it's an excellent book. Julie Lythcott-Haims was the dean of students at Stanford when she wrote this, because she was seeing students that started coming in as freshmen were no longer able to deal with the challenges that they were facing. They weren't able to handle if they got anything other than an A. Professors were literally afraid to give them an accurate grade because they were afraid of what might happen if they got anything besides an A, which they would consider to be a failure. So kids just not being prepared for the real world. So it's an excellent book. I highly recommend it. But when we talk about your changing role, what we're talking about is we encourage parents to not have your kids in a super structured environment and then all of a sudden have them just completely have 100% freedom with no accountability. And we see a lot of pitfalls happen that way. So ideally, what you're going to do is you're going to do that gradually. When they start showing, have a conversation with them. When they start showing more responsibility, just say, you know what, I noticed you've been really responsible. I want to start giving you some more freedoms. And you might make some mistakes, and that's okay. Making sure they know it's okay if they mess up. This is just a learning experience. And if you make a mistake, we'll revisit it. We might go back, but it's just all about learning. And what might that be? That might be curfew. It might be Schoolology. Instead of checking it 10 times a day, I'm going to check it once a month or whatever. But that really is a good example. For my kids, what we did, I'm going to check Schoolology just once a month. And as long as you're on track, we're gonna, yeah, it's real. If you're on track, then I'm gonna start pulling back. But if you're not, then, we'll need to revisit that. And it's okay, but we just want to make sure that we're keeping you on track. So that's an easy example. Other responsibilities might be, learning to make their own dentist and doctor's appointments and things like that. Just all the things that they're going to have to do. We were talking about budgets, teaching them about budgets and not having that be a very sudden thing that they have to deal with, but something that they've been learning about as you go. Kelly mentioned learning time management skills. This is huge. If they're leaving a really structured environment where every minute is accounted for, and all of a sudden they have to figure it out on their own, that doesn't work really well for a lot of kids. So you want to have them start making decisions as they show more and more responsibility. And then Kelly's friend is a former college coach, right? College football coach and NFL coach. And he said, make sure you talk about helping your kids get out of their comfort zone. And it really can build them so much confidence if they do something like, it might mean going to get a job or maybe volunteering at a food pantry all on their own without mom and dad. Maybe volunteering at a dog shelter or something, but just something like that gets them out of their comfort zone and helps build their confidence, and it really inspires growth. And then something we talk about so much at Teen Esteem is, and this is so important, we see all of this, but this is one of the big ones, teaching them and modeling healthy coping. Kids aren't able to bounce back really well from typical setbacks. And so we want to teach them healthy coping. And what does that look like? It doesn't come naturally to me, but what I do, because of my work at Teen Esteem, I know to be more intentional about it. I come home and I tell my daughter, you know what? I had a really rough day. We had some really tough stuff at work. I'm going to go take a walk, get some fresh air, and just get some exercise. Or even better, tell them, I'm going to go get a cup of coffee with Dad. I just need somebody to talk it out with. Teaching them that it's healthy to talk about our issues with somebody else when we're struggling. One thing you want to avoid, you don't want unhealthy coping. What does it look like to model unhealthy coping? I've had a terrible day at work. I need yes, 100%. Nobody's ever missed that one. Yeah, you can have your glass of wine if you want your glass of wine, but don't link it to coping. Just don't link it to coping. And then reminding them that and this is key. This is so big for our college age students right now. Reminding them that their mental and emotional health is a priority. And they're learning, things are changing, and the stigmas, we're really making a lot of strides with the stigma, but they have to be able to talk about it with us. And the more we start those conversations, the more comfortable they're going to be, because we want them to be able to come to us if they are struggling. And we want to make sure they don't think that we're going to feel like they failed or that we're disappointed or angry at them. We want to make sure that we have that door open. And if you already know your child struggles in this area, then and they are going to a 4-year, make sure they know who to turn to. Check out the school and find out what kind of support services that they have, because colleges are really addressing it. They're really getting a lot better about addressing it. And one more thing to be careful of: actions have consequences, and we want to make sure they know that before they're away at college or at a job where mom and dad can't bail them out. And Kelly has a really good example of that.
Kind of funny. I'm back to social media. I was at Florida State University, and we had about 450 student athletes. And one of our full-time, I guess he was an athletic advisor, was he started ghosting all the accounts of every student athlete. He actually signed up to follow them. They all accepted. Not one discerned, this person, I don't know who this is. He used a fake name. They all accepted. Yes, you can be part of this account. So he followed them. And over a few months, he collected a lot of the photos. And so we had an annual meeting, and we bring all the 450 student athletes, and it's a sloped auditorium and bright lights. You can see everybody's faces. The coaches are lining the wall. and his name's John, and he started putting up the photos, and he was talking about social media and how important it is for your image, your character, your representation. Who do you want to be? What does that say about you? And he started posting all the pictures from all their social media accounts, and you would not believe how many people in that room were sinking in their chairs, like they wanted to disappear. And you had the coaches glaring down at them, but they had poses with guns, they had obscene gestures, they were guzzling shots, beyond PDA, as far as what they were doing on their pictures. But they were drunk, they were stoned, you couldn't believe it. And this is what they posted on their own accounts. And the point being made was not only sheer embarrassment. We told them there was a software that they could use to take down all those things, but it was going to affect their internships. It affects potential jobs, future mates. You just don't want that. And it is digital. It's there. So you've got to do something about it. Don't make that mistake. It's not worth it. The actions have consequences. And later I was at University of Texas, worked at a lot of schools, and we had two girls that got arrested for shoplifting, and it was cosmetics. It was so stupid. It's shoplift for cosmetics, and they got mugshots. They got arrested. They got mugshots, and about 2 weeks later, they came to see me, and I applauded them for reaching out to an adult and coming to me with a problem. But they said, we're having a problem. Every time we Google our names, these mugshots keep coming up. Can you please take it down for us? And I had to have that conversation that it is there forever, ladies. This is digital, and this is a mistake that you're going to have to live with. And so it's just important to try to do it before it happens. You can course correct sometimes, but it's really important to get that message across how dangerous social media can
Yeah,
be.
sometimes you cannot course correct. That's really unfortunate. How many of you are super glad you didn't have social media when you were? I made really bad decisions, and I feel for these kids. I mean, did they post the mugshot themselves, or that just comes?
Oh, it just, it
just
came up
public
on I
information.
think because
Oof.
it's public information and
Oh.
a police report.
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah.
That's tough. So some conversations that you want to have now. Um, there's some liabilities that come with freedoms. And does anybody remember some of the liabilities that you might have had that might have come up because of the new freedom you had when you moved out of the house for the first time, or when you went to college?
It was just yesterday.
I remember I loved the fact that my professor didn't care if I showed up for class or not. You can guess where that went. It didn't go so well. It really affected my grade, obviously, and kind of held me back a little bit. I didn't get serious for the first couple of years. So there's some things that we want to make sure you're aware of, because again, this is college beyond the academics. You don't want your kids to be one of those 30%, and it's not always dropping out just because of grades. There are some things that can derail and even devastate your kids, and we're seeing it on a regular basis, and we want to share that with you because we don't want that to be your kids. This is really tough, but 26% of female and almost 7% of male undergraduates experience rape or sexual assault. So what can we do about this? Have the conversation. Be having the conversation on a regular basis. And for a couple of reasons. First of all, to raise awareness, talk to them about safety, going in groups, night classes, going to your car, just all the safety stuff. I'm going to have my daughter go to a self-defense class. But just having those conversations. But a big part of this percentage, I promise you, you're nodding your heads, is kids going to parties and getting intoxicated and someone taking advantage of them. That happens in high school and in college. This is a conversation we have to have with our kids because it happens on a pretty regular basis, unfortunately. And it's really devastating. And if you're having those conversations, they're going to be more comfortable coming to you if something happens. Because God forbid, if something does happen, you don't want them to walk through it alone. And the reason I say that, we have a young staff member, and she was sexually assaulted when she was under the influence of alcohol. But because she felt guilty, because she wasn't 21, she shouldn't have been drinking anyway. She thought it was her fault. She was ashamed because she thought her parents would be upset with her for drinking at all or for going to a party. And she tried to go through it alone, and that did not go well. And she eventually was able to share it. And now she actually shares with our students in the classroom and talks about it, encouraging students to reach out for help. So definitely having those conversations. When we're talking about parties, drugs, and alcohol, make sure they know your expectations. I have to talk to you about Adderall really quick. Does anybody know what kids call Adderall? They call it a study drug. It's not a study drug. It's a drug that your doctor prescribes to you if you need it, if you have ADHD. If you don't have ADHD, it can become very addictive and it can lead to other addictions. Not a safe drug, not a safe drug to take if it's not prescribed to you. Also, does anybody know what happens with counterfeit pills? Counterfeit pills are, yes, Leslie, it's so bad. I talked to a DEA agent. If you don't get it from your pharmacy, it's almost certain it's going to have fentanyl, and about this much is fatal. And they don't even know it because it looks just like a regular pill. So we have to have these conversations with our kids. Don't mix prescription drugs with alcohol, for goodness sakes. We work with families who've lost kids because they had a few beers and took a couple of painkillers and they lost their life.
My niece died last year from fentanyl. She was 19. So it's real. It's out there. You don't expect it. It's happened to so many people.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up because it's not just other families. We just had a parent meeting the other night, and one of the parents that was there had lost their son to fentanyl. Yeah. And then the marijuana. Did I? Yeah, marijuana.
Yeah, it's not on here.
I don't think I put it
Talk
on.
about marijuana.
Oh my gosh. We just posted something.
Yes.
So, it's not the drug that it was when we were in school. I don't know if you smoked weed when you were in school or not, but if you did and you think it's okay and you think it's a part of growing up, it's not like that anymore. Does anybody know why it's not like that anymore? The THC levels are astronomically higher than what they were. And now, and because it's new, we're just finding out that some of the side effects. It's leading to psychosis in young people, especially if you can do nothing else, at least get them to wait until they're 25 because their brain will be done developing. But it's leading to psychotic disorders. And the Wall Street Journal, and I can't remember who else, but you'll see if you check out our website and our social media, we posted on it recently. Make finances very clear. If they have to get a job, if they're going to need to get a part-time job to pay for their expenses, then you want to make sure that that's clear in advance. Credit card offers, oh my gosh, they come pouring in, 29%. Make sure they know. I remember my first, I thought American Express is so irresponsible. I can't believe they gave me a credit card. I think I was a sophomore in college and I didn't know how in the world I was going to pay off that $67. I still remember it was $67. I thought, I don't even have a job. How am I going to pay this off? So make sure you talk about that. Developing a communication plan, check in with me at night before you go to bed, just shoot me a text or let's make sure we have a phone call every Sunday night. And then one thing you want to make sure they know that it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to make mistakes. And that no matter what, mom and dad love you. We love you unconditionally. It seems cliche, but trust me, when they make a mistake, they're going to wonder. And it just breaks my heart because I know it's not true, but they don't always know it. So just make sure they know that you love them no matter what. You want to talk about adversity
Sure.
a little bit?
Well, adversity is it's really important how they overcome it. Again, we addressed, problem solving. How do they cope with it? I know that's something if they've experienced it in their life and you've worked them through it, that bodes well that they've kind of weathered the storm. They become warriors from that. It's a scar that they can be proud about because they know how to get through it, because you will face adversity at some point. And schools really love it if you have done it before you've gotten to college, because it just shows that you're able to be resourceful and overcome and be an overcomer. And that's somebody that once they leave college can probably overcome a lot of things that are thrown at you in life. So adversity and how you deal with it is really, really important. I think the next thing we want to talk about is college athletics. It's just a sidestep, and I'll spend a few seconds on this. It's just, I believe in it wholeheartedly. I think intercollegiate athletics is such a great tool. It's, you have all these great skill sets. You have chemists at school and you have cellists, and you would just have these wonderful specialists all over the campus. College athletics is another kind of specialty that kids have. But I will tell you, if you go to a four-year college, even a junior college, the demands on college athletics are crazy. If you go to a four-year college and if you happen to be on scholarship, it is like having a full-time job, to do your athletics and a full-time job to go to school. So be prepared. You've got to love it and you've got to be committed to it. It is not halfway there. And it's more than just practice and game time. It's travel time. It's weightlifting. It's watching film. It's treatment. So they may have regulations from NCAA that's 20 hours a week. That doesn't include all those other things. So when are you going to school and getting studying done? So it's a big commitment. So just make sure the extra pressure from that doesn't go in the wrong direction. And if you're on scholarship, you're held up to a higher standard as far as a certain GPA that you have to maintain. Otherwise, you lose that scholarship. So there's a lot of pressure. So I don't want to compromise the love for it, but I just mean be prepared for it. Again, the positive here is if you go away to school and you're part of a team, any sort of organization or team, it's such a built-in family. It's such a nice thing. You have the coaches, you have the advisors, you have your teammates. It's a great thing that students love to have. I did want to talk about the potential issues to be aware of that when you're at school, and this is for both student athletes and students just going away, you're dealing with new cultures. You might be growing up in a small little environment, all of a sudden you're with people from all over the world. It's new cultures, the way they dress, the way they talk, what they practice. So you have to be prepared to just kind of be a little bit more flexible and open-mindedness. Again, this is something you can expose your children to now to be prepared for. The adversity angle, really important to be able to navigate and to pivot. Isolation. They're going to feel isolated for the very first time. They're used to having dogs and family and brothers and sisters. They're not going to have that. They'll be alone a lot of the time, even though they're in big schools. Substances, Julie talked about that abuse, sexual activity and abuse. Those are things to talk about and be very honest and open about. And then the stress. We want to make sure that coping mechanism that we spoke about is how do they handle their stress? Do they have those healthy mechanisms like I'm really stressed out, I'm going to go for a run, I'm going to go lift versus I'm going to turn to drugs, I'm going to cutting myself, self-harm, and God forbid, suicide. So it's really important to have these conversations, but just make sure that, they're comfortable with their own identity. They're okay with being by themselves, and that the groups that they tend to associate themselves with add value to their lives. Add value. Don't just hang out with people just to be hanging out with people.
Yeah, and we don't want to scare you.
No.
But just having these conversations is huge, and don't be afraid to have that suicide conversation. My son was struggling with depression, and especially because of what I do. But I just said, you know what, have you ever considered suicide? And he said, no, I haven't, but if I ever do, I know I need to come to you. So don't be afraid to have those conversations. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's great. I think to just add some levity here and add some fun, we did ask some college freshmen some questions. Asked them 3 questions, and their responses were pretty amazing. We thought so. So we asked them what their biggest surprise was being a freshman. Again, it's like the amount of time. They couldn't even believe the amount of time they had. They were just blown away from that. All of a sudden, they went from 5 days a week with high school to I only go to class Tuesdays and Thursday. What do I do with the other 5 days? They had 5 full days to fill, so they better be making good choices and using their time wisely. One of the students did say that he was really thankful that his parents gave him a lot of freedom in high school, and it prepared him because when he has to lift at 6 a.m., he knows I got to go to bed early the night before. So that practicing it early, it really makes a difference. Again, nobody accountable to anybody, right? Professors, your dorm, hey, you don't show up, nobody's accountable. And then every day is completely different. It's not like in high school where it's really, you get that road kind of routine. You don't have that necessarily in college. It changes quickly. So it's very different. The next one we asked them was something they wish they knew prior to college. One of them said, it's such a great chance to reinvent yourself. If you've had a really bad, hard high school where you've just been on the outs and you haven't done well, this is your chance. You can rewrite your book here. So it was really invigorating. They thought that was really inspiring. They were really happy about that. That you lose the fakiness of high school, get rid of those cliques. So they thought that it leveled the playing field. As they said, everybody here at college just wants to learn. It's not about who's popular and who's this. So that was really fun. And then it was just a chance to be independent. They love the chance to be independent and they get to make choices. but it's important that they make the right one. So that's where you can really help with your children
This
today.
is some very wise advice.
Yeah, and these all came from freshmen this year. Advice that they had for seniors who are transitioning to college is they said it's really important as you're going into it. So that those of you who are sending kids off to school is that don't overload that first semester. They just really felt that burnout was really too easy to happen. It could lead to anxiety. Enjoy where you're at. Be open to new things. Kind of dabble and touch upon anything and everything you want to explore. But they said there's no need to conquer everything. So don't take 18 units. You may not even want to take 15 units, but just make sure that you, if you overload yourself too early, they felt that you could, wouldn't enjoy everything, and then you'd start getting depressed and isolated. So they just said, take it easy and enjoy where you're at.
So
So
it looks so easy signing up on paper, but then when the rubber meets the road,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
can be really tough.
So those were their answers. We thought that was really great. So just some additional tips. You can read through these. It kind of comes through as far as just, you have different children and they're all different. I'm sure you know that. So you can't compare, and they're going to have different journeys. We talked about, learning to go from being maybe an overarching parent to just a coach, a supporting, you watch them as they're growing. And just that unconditional love. It's just so very, very important.
Yeah, it's shocking when kids tell us that. They really don't know. So again, I can't emphasize enough to just make sure that they are aware. We all know we jump out in front of a truck for them. They don't know, apparently.
No. And those are our parting thoughts. I know that Julie has some closing comments.
Yeah, well, actually, just there's a summary, but what we want you to know is that I love it if you want to take pictures, but if you want a copy of the slides, please go ahead and let me know. We have a website with a lot of resources. You can join our mailing list. I have a QR code in a second. We have social media where we post stuff like on marijuana and other things. We got so much great feedback from students that were actually made a handout, and we're going to put that on our social media on our website of advice that they would give to incoming students. And we're going to be back March 6th to talk about grit and resilience, which is a really good one.
Yeah.
So those are the QR codes. If you have questions, we'll be here for a few minutes, but if you have questions, please feel free to email myself or Kelly. And if you would like to sign up for our mailing list or want to check out our website.
Yep. And we'd be happy to share this PowerPoint with you. We'll just send it to you. Absolutely.
Oh,
okay.
Very good. Okay. Okay. Now we'd be happy to, if people have questions. Yeah. Oh, good idea.
We're recording this to send out to
The question I have is the pros and cons that you guys mentioned to the junior college transfer to your college of choice.
Right.
Another way that I was going to ask, sort of way to avoid the cons of going to junior college. What if you got basically 2-4-2 as being the recommendations of 2 safeties, 4
Matches.
passes, and 2 reach ones?
Right.
What if you get into one of the safeties, but you actually are trying to go for your reach and transfer from that? Is that a possibility? Is that
Absolutely.
something?
Absolutely. I think
That's not talked about.
No,
Mostly
yeah.
it's just
Yeah,
the
you're
other
right.
way around.
You're right. You're right. It's not a guarantee, but it is a helpful way to look at it. I think anytime you've had that experience, you're kind of like, you're considered more an adult. It's like somebody has more experience, on a job. Instead of just somebody who hasn't had any experience, this person now has experience being a college student.
Way you sort of got to do that thing without the disadvantage of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that is a good option.
That is a good option.
I see.
Great point to bring up.
Yeah, and I forgot to touch on it. So TAG is Transfer Admission Guarantee. A lot of the UCs have an agreement, many of the UCs have an agreement with our community colleges where you'll have guaranteed acceptance as a transfer student. So I mentioned my daughter, she would have had to have over a 4.0 to get into her program at UC Davis. But she has a guarantee to get into UC Davis if she gets a 3.25. And that's a guarantee. She doesn't even have to get a 3.25, but that's to have it guaranteed with that special TAG program. So you want to do research because it's different with every school and every major. Do you know, you're familiar with that? Any other questions? We'd love to answer any questions you have, or you can email us.
You guys have been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks
Really
everyone for
appreciate it.
coming.
Thanks.